introduce our guest speaker, who's going to deliver a session on contingency planning and incident management for us this afternoon. I'd like to introduce you to Ian Long.
Hi everyone. I'm going to do my David Brent entrance there, but I don't think I will. Right, just to, before I get going, so I'm here to talk about contingency planning. This is the first time I've ever been referred to as the feature presentation, so I hope I don't miss at all from that sort. And when I arrived this afternoon, I actually bumped into an old colleague of mine. I won't name him just so he's embarrassment. But he said he didn't realise I was here, otherwise he wouldn't have come. So that gave me all the confidence I needed. But he said, so what's new in contingency planning? And actually, there isn't a lot that's new. So I'm not going to come along this afternoon and give you earth-shattering pearls of wisdom. What I hope I will do this afternoon is just get the cogs working and actually if you go away this afternoon and actually sort of mull over a few of the key points that I'll cover this afternoon, then hopefully it will stand you in good stead as you move forward developing your plans for the next year. So, what are my aims this afternoon? And I thought the best thing actually is to stick a picture up there, because for me that actually sort of encapsulates really what I'm trying to move people away from if I do my job right. So, what I'd like to sort of go through this afternoon, and the aim of this afternoon really, is to recognise, if you come away recognising the potential for things to go wrong with your event. What are the sorts of things that could go wrong with your event? And if you recognise them, what plans can you put? Where do you start? How do you develop plans to sort of mitigate those things? And equally, when something happens, because inevitably it doesn't matter how much planning you do, how much preparation you do, things do go wrong. I work on major events, I work on small events, and some with huge budgets, some with tiny little budgets, and it doesn't matter the scale of the event, things go wrong. That's fine, but we have to know about how do we communicate things, how do we communicate to the participants, how do we communicate to the spectators, all the various stakeholders that we've got involved with our events. What are the messages we do, how do we do it? So that's really what I'd like to sort of cover this afternoon. It is a whistle-stop tour, but there will be an opportunity, if you want to fire questions as I talk, I'm fine with that, or we can save questions up till the end. I've got my time slot, I won't tell you what it is, so I'm checking the watches. But I'm very, very comfortable taking questions as we proceed. So, before I sort of go any further, I do believe in audience participation, by the way. I know I've got the graveyard shift after you've got your blood sugar hit. So, first thing, anybody want to have a stab at what we actually mean by contingency plan? Give me a definition for a contingency plan. James, you go for it.
It's the what if. It's the thing that you hope will never happen, but might.
Yeah.
And it's those things that are not within the normal standard event operation.
Right, okay.
They can be internally or externally influenced.
Okay. Anyone else want to add to that?
The thing that is what you're going to do about it when that happens.
Right, okay. Did a little bit of trolling around in various dictionaries and things, and this, I sort of cobbled one together that I think sort of covers most things, but it's contingency plan. A plan for dealing with an emergency, or with something that could possibly happen. It could cause problems at the time, but it could cause problems in the future as well. So that's really what a contingency is. It's for that sort of emergency or that incident. It could cause problems at the time or in the future. I'd like to add a little bit extra to that, I think, because I think this really is sort of central to it. And that's that your plan, whatever it is, the idea is that, and Gareth kept using the word safety, safe, and that's really where your planning comes from, is that if your event what you'd like to do is develop your plans, so hopefully your event can continue, but the key thing is you're not going to compromise safety if that incident happened. Unfortunately, sometimes that's not possible. So if safety is compromised, it's that point at which you say, actually this event can't continue any longer. So if that's the case, it's not just making that decision, it's then how do you close your event down safely? How do you do it in a controlled manner? You've got cyclists out all over the course. How do you communicate them? How do you get people back safely? You can't just sort of throw up your arms and expect everybody to wander back. You've got a responsibility as an event organiser. You've got that duty of care to make sure you've got some systematic way of closing your event down. So, what do you think, just fire these out, what do you think are the sort of possible benefits of having a contingency plan in place? Just fire them out.
The obvious one is, unlike the panic, you've got a pre-arranged plan as a guide so that you can deal with the situation.
Yeah. Great.
You've got a plan, and other people in the system will know what the plan is as well. So if something happens, then you're not the only one suddenly thinking on your feet.
So you've got a plan that's shared with others, and they know what their role is if something happens. Yep. Excellent.
Yeah, I was going to add that it's important that you've got a plan, because when having a plan is something that how to operate the plan.
Yep.
Because you're one person, and you're not out in the water.
Yeah.
The areas where.
Yeah. So you can have the greatest plan in the world, but if it's only in your head, it's chocolate teapot, because you can only do one task at a time. Yeah. Is that? Sorry, there's one gentleman at the back.
So things may escalate horribly out of control if things go a little astray.
Yeah. Hence, thus speaks the control freak in the room. Absolutely, I'm a control freak, by the way. So control freaks, good at event organising, we just need to learn to communicate a bit more. Any others? Okay. More robust event. I think if we've got those plans in place, if we know what we're doing to deliver the event normally, fantastic. But if we've got a plan in place that if A, B, C or D happen, we know what we're going to do as a team, we can manage that, we've got a more robust event. Really building on what Bob said, prepared. We're prepared, we're ready for it. We can mitigate that stress and build confidence. If anybody's been involved in event organising and something goes wrong and you haven't got a plan for it, as you've seen the rabbit in the headlights, it's that sort of that really churny feeling. It's one of the most uncomfortable feelings in the world. Clarity. Point the gentleman was making, everybody knows what they're doing, what their role is. Start to look at, if you start to develop your plans, and this is the ideal time of the year to be looking at developing your plans, because this is where you've got the relative calm. For the majority of us, unless we're putting on the odd winter event, majority of us, it's not really sort of till the summer season, till April onwards that our events are running. So this is the best time to be doing some of this contingency planning. If you work at your plans, as you develop them, you'll start to identify tasks. As you identify tasks, then you have to identify who undertakes those tasks. So it all sort of follows and falls into place. Picking up the point about, I said earlier about if the event, if you're compromising safety and the event can't continue or it can't start, as you develop your plans, you'll actually identify at what point do we hit no-go. At what point do we say this event can't go ahead, or at what point do we say this event is going along, something's happened and we're going to have to stop the event. Anna mentioned earlier that I work on the Great Swim Series, and Great North Swim, over the weekend we'll put 10,000 swimmers into Lake Windermere. On a Saturday, which is the busiest day of the event, we'll probably put 5,000 people into the water, going off in waves of up to 300 every half an hour. So we've got a lot of people churning through. We've had a fatality in that event. Middle of the day, we've got waves in the water, we've got waves queuing up to come into the water afterwards. We've got to make decisions about can that event continue. We've got safety team that have been called into action to deal with the incident. we've got to manage that. So have we got the safety and resources to continue to keep the rest of the event safe? We've got to manage all the welfare side of things. So a lot of our resources are tied up. So all those sort of things we have to think about and come up with, can we continue the event? And then one that's probably, that's all those first points are really about sort of internal sort of dialogues. But then, does anybody here have to go and present to safety advisory groups? Yeah, so you're familiar with safety advisory groups? Yeah. So these are usually local authority, should be local authority chaired groups set up with all your various highways, emergency services, local authority representatives, and they're there. You submit your event to that panel, and they look at your plans, and basically they're supposed to be there in a role to support you and to offer advice in terms of how you might improve things. Sometimes they go a little bit over the other direction and they sort of come back and almost tell you why you shouldn't be doing things. But they can be an extremely supportive group. But if you look at their terms of reference, then a key one for safety advisory groups is that the organiser has taken appropriate steps to ensure reasonable safety of the public. So if ever your event, you do have to submit your event to a safety advisory group, then contingency planning really will be sort of something they'll look at. They tend to, for triathlons, they tend to focus more on the highway. So they will very much look at sort of your traffic management plans. But sometimes they can take a wider remit and look at the other elements as well. But certainly where the public are involved, where we've got athletes interacting with the public, and that could be from your car parking when you first arrive at the event, when you leave, but certainly cyclists out on the highway, all those sorts of things, they will be looking at your plans and the what-if scenario. So if you were doing the Attack Caledonia when it first year it started, and you've got all these cyclists out on the road, and you've got somebody, local activists, not happy that the road closures, and they throw tacks on the road, and you've got all your escort motorcyclists all getting punctured as well as your cyclists. It's those sort of things. What happens? How do you manage those sort of processes? So, just moving on, I had a little play and just trying to think of what are the sort of typical things that could happen at a triathlon, or a quathlon, or duathlon. What's it, did it say aquabike? Is that one? I've never organised one of those, but I'm assuming that's the swimming bike bit. Okay, so what might happen? So, environment, wind, wet, lightning, hot, cold, fog, and if you're doing open water swims, hopefully not pool swims, because if we've got an issue with water quality, we're really going to worry. But water quality, with that said, swimming pools, how many times have you turned up at your local pool and it's closed because of water quality issues? Happens quite often, usually follows children's swimming lessons. But water quality and water temperature, lots and lots of different environmental factors. And this is the sort of thing that your swimmers, your runners, your triathletes, they won't be thinking like that. They've got race brain on. So you've got to do the thinking for them. You've got to think, you're making decisions for them on their behalf. They are not responsible, because once that flag drops, we've all seen it, as athletes, we've probably all experienced it. You're just so focused on what you're doing. So we've got to think about all those different scenarios. What might happen? The course, and I'm not going to talk too much about course and traffic management today, because I think it's the next roadshow workshop. It is going to be focusing on the sort of traffic management side of things, and I believe that it will be available. You'll be able to get hold of that slide. I think it'll be a presentation online as well, so you will be able to access that. But just generally, on the course, you could have an accident, you could have incidents to the participant, or there could be something that happens that's outside of your event, some sort of traffic collision that actually affects your course and stops you being able to have access to it. The athletes themselves, go missing, get lost, happens too regularly, sustain an injury, illness, or they out on the bike and they suffer a mechanical breakdown and they cross the finish line and have an emotional breakdown. But we'll focus on the mechanical breakdown. Spectators, because we tend to think about our athletes, but we've actually got a responsibility for everybody else. You're responsible. Remember the safety advisory group, it's about the public. It's not just about your athletes, it's not just about your team, it's the wider piece. So spectators, so you might have some medical incident that actually presents itself within the people who are actually at the event just watching, or missing child, vulnerable person, those are fairly commonplace. The venue itself, outside of your field of play where you're actually doing your swim, cycling, running, car parks, probably the one that most of us can relate to, is car parks getting filled up. And I don't do so many events now as a participant, still do the odd one or two to keep my hand in, but I've gone to numerous events in the past, and the car parks, access to the car park is perhaps on the bike course, and the car park fills, and then you've got traffic building up, and then you have cyclists sort of trying to weave in and out of cars, and suddenly it becomes quite a sort of nasty situation. So in terms of your car park plans, is there something there you need to do? If it isn't adequate enough, or if there's going to be peak times, have you got some sort of alternative that you can use, an overflow of some description? Or evacuating the building. If you do pool-based triathlons, things like that, then the building itself probably has an existing emergency action plan. You can probably tap into that, and they'll probably coordinate it for you because they'll have members of staff there. But when we're building temporary infrastructure and out in the field in the middle of nowhere, we've got a site that we need to potentially evacuate. And then it becomes more and more sort of relevant nowadays, this whole thing around security. Certainly all the plans that I submit for major events now, crowd management is becoming more and more relevant, and those sort of plans are really pulled over far more than they ever used to be. So that's a security, crowd and vehicle management. So as you look down that list, think about your event and how many of those potentially apply to your event. Pretty much all? Yeah? Is that generally the same for most people? Do they think? Actually, yes. Greater or lesser extent, those are all relevant. Now the slightly more uncomfortable part of the equation, if you do recognise those and you know that those are sort of incidents that typically happen to you, have you got plans in place? Do you know what you're going to be doing for all those scenarios? If you do, I'm going to pack it now and go, but if not, I'll carry on for a little bit longer. So you said yes, so we're going to go and check your plans.
Go ahead.
But seriously, I think this is the bit. This is where I go back to the picture at the start. The head in the sand, because that's the bit about that these things could potentially happen at your events. I don't think any of those are sort of anything out of the ordinary. I think those are fairly standard. I mean, is there anything anybody would like to add to that? I'm sure I've missed some there.
All I would say is not only for the event, it's the setting up and breaking down as well.
Yeah.
It's not mentioned like people moving equipment around,
Yeah.
And all that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, and I think, and that is something I also deliver on the event organisers course. And I don't know if things have changed, but certainly from the event permitting side of triathlon, it very much focuses upon the swim, the bike, the run, the transition, and the medical side of things. There's not such a great focus on the build and the D-rig. And one thing I would say to you as organisers is, that where I've had probably the most incidents is probably on build and D-rig, because that's the time, particularly D-rig, when everybody's tired, everybody's been up since early hours in the morning, they're all tired, they want to get away quickly, and that's where they start taking the shortcuts. So yeah, absolutely. So I think
You've also got on things like human error. Many years ago, we did the Wakefield Triathlon, which was then part of the Grand Prix series. And at the first roundabout, you were supposed to go straight off. The marshal then directed 400 people's right.
What year was that, out of
It was
interest?
about 89.
I was going to say Putney's. I was one of the ones directed the wrong way. I thought, they haven't done it again,
Yeah.
surely.
Because you went that way the year before and would follow the marshal's signal.
Yeah.
And then came round the loop, and all the leaders through the middle, then was the middle road and then the middle Baptist. So they ended up 400 people from all over the country, just needing points in the Grand Prix series. Race abandoned, ran a 10k race there, and they gave you free race.
Yeah, I mean, like I say,
A lot of upset afterwards.
first-hand experience of that. One of the things, actually, there was one of the issues there, and this is going back a long time, but one of the issues there was they actually used scouts on the roundabouts, and actually they had scouts directing people in roundabouts, and so we've got youngsters. I'd like to think since 1989, sort of 30 years on, we're probably moving away from that, and it's good to see things like chapter 8, traffic management. Those sort of, that sort of thing was something that event organs never used to talk about. That was something other companies did. That was you get somebody in, you get a traffic management company in. But it's good to see that people are becoming more familiar. I'm not saying they've got to sort of undertake it themselves, but actually becoming familiar with it and understanding it, I think is really important. Sorry, Bob.
The other thing that's not covered, the people working on the event, particularly major events that go over a number of days, how tired those people get, and is there a facility for them to get home safely?
Yeah.
I one of the motos on his way home from London, first people on his bike and rode into the back of the car and stopped in front of him.
Yeah.
Fortunately he was okay, but he was actually offered accommodation overnight, but it needs to be taken into account.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think welfare. is critical. So yeah, I agree. So I'll update the slide and I'll stick welfare in there, I think, as well. Okay. Just to sort of take, in terms of developing your plans, I'm just going to put a slide on which I apologise for the amount of information on it, but you'll be able to have access to the slides, so you'll be able to have a look at it in a little bit more detail. But I thought what I'd do is have a look at a sort of a worst case scenario, a serious incident or fatality, and just start to have a look at the sort of things that you might need to consider, just to get a feel for the various tasks. Oh, sorry, I do apologise. No. I'm going to move on to this. So, fatality, serious incident. What I've tried to do here is just say, identify some key actions, look at the sort of things that you might want to consider, and also, how can you sort of make sure, what's an audit trail have you got in place to make sure that those are being captured? Or if there was an incident and it was subject to some sort of inquiry, investigation, then what's the sort of portfolio of evidence that you've got to say, to show what was done, when it was done, and how it was done, who did it? So it comes back to start. The first one is not in any particular order, but is the event able to continue, or do you need to close it down? Do you need to stop the event? And in terms of the consideration, set up a little safety group within your team. We have the Great Swims. We'll have the event director. We'll have the safety manager. And we might have a water safety manager, and we'll also have site manager, and we will come together and we'll make decisions on any of the key situations to decide whether we are able to continue or not. Some of the things you might want to look at is the race route, is the whole race route still open? And probably the one that's most pertinent is, are there sufficient staff, are there sufficient volunteers, are there sufficient marshals, stewards, to ensure that that safety is not compromised. So, have your team, make the decision, but also have some sort of post-incident reporting and actually make a record, highlight who was involved, what the decision was made, what the decision was, who was involved in making the decision, and the reasons for those actions. Capture that information on some sort of post-incident report. Staff responding appropriately to the situation. Remember, this is a fatality or a serious incident. So, at the most basic level, has your event team, and that is the whole team, not just the leads in the different areas. Is everybody aware of what to do if somebody comes along and starts asking them questions about a particular incident or issue that's happened? So that could be as simple as just having something to say that if there's a serious incident and someone comes to talk to you about it, ask questions about it because you don't know who they are, then this is where you refer those questions to. Don't engage in trying to sort of somebody's guessing whatever. This is where you direct them to. So, have you got some training or briefing notes or is that a bullet point in your training that you give to your team? You will probably have to contact emergency services. So, who makes the call? Do they know where to direct the emergency services to? And in terms of some sort of audit, record that time of that call, who made the call. Some of the sort of more obscure ones, but this is the ones that can catch them out. Removing the race number or photographs. Can be, you've got all these photography companies out there, they're all taking photos of all the competitors and they put up the photos online, all those sort of things. One of the worst things is if you've got somebody who's been involved in a serious incident or worst case scenario has been a fatality, having their photo will be the one up on the website or whatever, advertising, get your photos here or something like that. So make sure that things like photographs are removed, and similarly, it doesn't look great from a relative's point of view or anything like that, seeing a DNR or something, DNF in terms of the results. So making sure things like those results are clean. Retrieving baggage. That scenario where you've got, there's been an incident, you know the race number, and you're going to transition or changing rooms or whatever, you've got the bag. So who collects the bags? And then there's the whole issue around bag security and honesty. So if you need to open a bag, whether it be for identification, etc., or for some sort of contact details, who opens it? Have you got witnesses to do that? So have you got some sort of baggage retrieval form or something so that you've got a method of doing that? Always a difficult one, making announcements over the event PA. In a scenario, what do you say? Who's going to make the announcement? What do you say? What do you say if, you've got to be careful, are there relatives, are there family there at the event? So, have you got some pre-prepared sort of statements? Have you decided who's going to make the announcements, etc.? So think that all these things, think through in advance, it makes life far more comfortable. Welfare support. So next of kin. So you've got two scenarios at all of our events. One is the next of kin are actually at the event. So who's going to manage that? Who's going to look after them? Explain what's happened? Have you got a quiet area you can take them to, etc. But what if the next of kin aren't present at the event? So then it's going to be a telephone call. So again, who makes it? What are they going to say? So again, a simple thing that you can have is have a pre-prepared welfare support letter available that can either be given if they're there or can be emailed through to them or sent to their home address. And that welfare support letter will be very, very simple, but it will give them the relevant contact details should they need to follow up on anything as in the days and weeks and months that follow. The other side of the equation, welfare support, is the event staff that are involved in it. It can be quite traumatic for anybody who's involved. You know, prefer to carry on, are able to cope with things. Others need to be, need to come away. Sometimes you have to make the decision for them, which is probably most likely going to be the scenario. So again, have you got somebody within your team that can be freed up if necessary to look after people and make sure that everything's okay? Then the horrible one, the dealing with the media. As permitted events in the British Triathlon, you've got the support of the team at British Triathlon, and certainly they will be there to support you in the events of if you've got a serious instance, fatalities, they're there, make use of the team. But more locally, then who is going to be the point of contact if there is any, any dealing with that sort of like immediate media response. So again, pre-prepared statements can be quite useful and quite helpful for those sort of things. RIDDOR, has everybody heard of RIDDOR? So RIDDOR, if the incident is reportable, it might not be, but if the incident is reportable, who reports it? Have a copy, fill in the form, have a copy of the form, make sure it's all available in your little portfolio. And then things like gathering witness statements and other documents. Who's responsible? What information do they collect? So again, having some sort of pro formas available for the team. Within our event management plans, we have a whole appendix, and within the back of that, all these various pro formas, they're all at the back there, with pre-prepared statements for fatalities. We've got a whole pack of them there. We photocopy the pack off, and we've got a pack available that's made ready, so that we know at a moment's notice if we have to invoke any of these sort of things, it's there, it's ready to go. Yeah.
Can I just say about the welfare support for the event staff?
Yeah.
Do not underestimate the effect, particularly a fatality, will have on the people dealing with it. As you know, I've dealt with a significant number.
Yeah.
And whilst it may not be apparent at the time, it will show later, and that effect can be minimised by the way it's dealt with at the time. You can minimise the effect later.
Yeah.
By dealing with it properly.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I haven't got time at the moment to sort of go into all the welfare side of things, but I'm more than happy to talk about that. And it's in some. Actually, the welfare side of things is a workshop in its own right. So look at some of those things. But you're absolutely spot on there, Paul. So when you look at that, and that's not an exhaustive list. I've probably missed another 10 tasks or so, probably more off there. But actually, there's a heck of a lot going on. So when you look at that and you're thinking, and you're delivering an event as the organiser, the event director, and you've got all these things happening, and you've got all these various tasks and bits and pieces that need to happen. So how, if you develop these plans, how can you sort of best sort of deliver them? What sort of safety nets can you put in place to help you as an event organiser? And at this point, I just want to step back a little bit and look at emergency services. Now, this is a very, very simplified sort of structure in terms of, but it pretty much holds for the emergency services in the way they deal with things. And because they're emergency services, it's a pretty good starting point to actually go and look at. So you may have come across or heard of them talking about Gold Command. And Gold Command is really, that's the sort of strategic side of things. So let's have a look at the Met Police. Is it Cressida Dick, is it? Have I got the right one in my current? Yeah, so you'd have the likes of Cressida Dick and the sort of the top brass will probably be sitting in Gold Command in terms of, do they shoot or don't they shoot, all that sort of that real, developing some of those plans at that strategic level. Then they'll have a silver command, and the silver command, so gold command probably won't be anywhere near where the incident or the issue is. They could be hundreds of miles away potentially. Silver command will be the ones that are probably closer, probably geographically often will be closer, much closer to where the incident is or the issue is. And then bronze command, that's the sort of operational sort of level. So those are the guys on the ground that are actually delivering things. Again, very, very simplified. So if you look at that, then from an event point of view, we've got a little bit of equivalent. So if you look at our gold command, so as event organiser, that for me would be the sort of the planning group, or if you're in a club, your club committee, your event committee. Those are the guys that are actually doing the overview and deciding, setting your entry price for your events. They're deciding what the various parameters are for how you're going to deliver the event. That's really where I'd like to think that all these contingency plans are flagged up and they're discussed, because I think the best contingency plans are not just done by an individual. They're ones that probably may initially be drawn up by an individual, get the first draft or whatever, but it's shared and it's tested, and people get the opportunity to ask questions, or that's great, but what if we did this, what if we did that? So the gold command, I think from an event point of view, I'd see that as a planning group or a committee. Tactical, and I'm going to come on to this in a second, I would see this as event control. So I'm going to talk about event control in a little bit more detail in a second. So this is where a lot of that sort of directing. So the Silver Command in emergency services, they'll be there directing. You're doing A, B, C, or whatever, and you're firing out those instructions that go out to the operatives on the ground. So if we have an event control is that sort of function. And then operational, that's where you've got your delivery team. Now I think that I would guess that the majority of you in this room probably have got some sort of planning group or committee. Might be one or two of you do things individually, but it's very hard to put an event on your own. I've tried it, it doesn't work. So the majority of you will have some sort of event planning group or committee, and you will also have a delivery team. You tend to have those two. What is very often lacking at events is that middle tier, that sort of tactical, that event control side of things. And that's the bit, for me, that it really is the sort of glue that holds everything together. And as an event organiser, that's the bit that gives me confidence that when things happen, that I've got that support on the ground of the event control. Post-event, I've got the support of British Triathlon, I've got the support of the emergency service, etc. But at the time, it's having that event control in there. So looking at the event control, can I just ask, hands up those who have some sort of event control?
Usually defined, yes.
Two hands go up, yeah? Okay. So if you go to look at emergency services, if you look at a major event, so if you look at, I don't know, Leeds World Series, or Nottingham, or you go to London Tri, any of the really, really big events, they will have an event control function that will probably have multi-agency event control. So they will probably have someone from highways in there. They will undoubtedly have somebody representing the medical support there. They will have somebody there from the local authority who is there probably from the licensing side of things, or who knows all the various departments. If we suddenly needed to get a road cleaned or whatever, they know who to contact from waste cleansing services, all those sort of things. So they'll have a room that's set up. It will have loads of radios. It'll have all the event plans on the wall, all the road names. They'll have copies of all the the road closure order, etc. They will have all the various details of where the steward locations are, and they are effectively the nerve centre. That's great for major events, but for the majority of us, we're doing small events. We don't have those resources, and to be honest, we probably don't need to have that level. It's probably totally inappropriate. But we can actually scale it right down. Now, I've said in the first bullet point, normally two people. I would always advise 2 people if you can as a minimum. However, I do actually perform this function myself at a swim series that we do, that an open water swim series, where the nature of that series and because of the way that it all works out, it's absolutely fine for it just to be one person. But I would always advise have 2 people. So you've got one person that might be listening to radios or radio things, and one person who's actually where we need to make a note of something. You've got somebody actually possibly sitting at a laptop or whatever with a, just jotting down the notes. It always works better that way if you can do it. Absolutely critical, some sort of quiet space or isolation. So don't stick your event control next to results when everybody's piling in to find out what result they got for their what split they got or whatever. Try and find them somewhere that's quiet and isolated. It's great if they can see some of the activity, but to be honest, it's not essential. It's absolutely not essential for them to be able to see things. What they can do, I suppose the critical thing about this is it does rely on you having some sort of radio system, so that's just something to bear in mind. But what they will do is listen in to the radios, so they will actually hear what's going on. They'll hear the radio traffic, and they will log key communication. So when John's been stuck on the a mile 1 drink station and he hasn't had a cup of coffee or a break and he comes on the radio, probably not worth logging that. But when you've got Jim or Sally in the car park saying 10 o'clock car park's full, actually that's one that I would log on there, because that sort of information, when you come to get, every time we do, I do an event, my event control will come back and they will give me an electronic copy of a document that's got it's time-stamped and it's just got key messages in there. And when I come to organise the event next year, that's part of my review process. I actually look at it and see things. So if you get things like car parks filled at a certain time, actually making a note of that, particularly if you're running the same timetable, you're one step ahead because you've seen that's where the problem occurred. Right, we've got the same wave size, same wave structure, same time. So if it was a problem this year, good chances it'll be a problem next year. So let's put the plan in to make sure and try and mitigate that if we can. So just on a basic level of giving you really, really meaningful feedback as an event organiser to help you improve events, that's fantastic. The second